All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting meeting for this Thursday, January 5th, 2023, 9:05 a.m. My name is Ty Menzer, Vice Chair of the Board. Commissioner and our Chair, Carolina Mejia, is participating virtually. And we have Commissioner Gary Edwards to my left, County Manager Amiro Chavez, and various staff members. For virtual public attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel where this meeting is being live streamed and will be archived. First item is to review draft agenda of Tuesday's meeting for January 10th, which we have not done yet because we had a planning session on Tuesday. So we'll go right into that, and that meeting will be called to order at 2 p.m. here in 3000 Civic Avenue for our first Tuesday afternoon meeting here. Let's see, Pledge of Allegiance to be led by myself, and then we will look at approving the agenda for that meeting. Presentations, there are two scheduled. The first is a certificate of appreciation, and County Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. I believe you had a discussion when you were going through the appointment for the Housing Authority, in which the reappointment of Mr. Neil Callahan was not part of your decision-making process. During that conversation, you requested that perhaps it was a good point for you to make it recognizing Mr. McClanahan on all the years he has served in the Housing Authority. So this is an opportunity for you to go through that process and have a certificate of appreciation to be presented to Mr. McClanahan for his 21 years of services in the Housing Authority Commission. So I believe Mr. McClanahan will be attending in person.
Pardon me, he will, and I believe that Craig Chance, the staff contact for
Craig
Housing
Chance,
Authority, is going
okay.
to attend as well.
So that will be a good opportunity for you to express your appreciation.
Anything on that, Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir, I'm good.
All right, then our second presentation will be Martin Luther King Jr. Day Proclamation.
Yeah, this is something you discussed this on your planning session this past Tuesday. And usually we have this mid-February. Commissioner Mejia requested the board to bring this a little bit forward because Dr. Jackson would like to use the signed proclamation when they have a celebration about Martin Luther King and the following week. I believe Dr. Jackson may be attending, and also she will be available for you to have a conversation with her related to this proclamation.
Okay, and I will use this opportunity to point out that we set the schedule earlier this week for the year. Often we would not have a board meeting after a Monday holiday, but we made some adjustments. And one of the adjustments is we are going to have a board meeting on the day after the Monday holiday. So there will be a January 17th meeting,
Right.
the Board of County Commissioners. So that's a change from previous years. Okay, anything there, Commissioner?
No, sir.
Okay, the public will have the opportunity to address the board. We'll have a county manager's update. Anything there? No?
I don't have any specific updates for you, Commissioner, this time around.
Okay, consent agenda, we have items 3A through 3E, and 3A is, looks like 3A, B, C, and D are voucher lists.
Yeah, I'd like to take the time, we moved those on your consent items. All contains payments to the atrium. And most of the payments are related to finalizing the furniture, finalizing the tenant improvements, but mainly start related to paying the lease of this building as we have it. So I'd like to have this conversation with the board. And if Commissioner Edwards would like to bring any of the items they have atrium related expenditures to be at the department, we can certainly do so. So just for the members of the public, to the benefit of the public is item 3A is for the week of November 28, 2022 for $6,488,000. Item 3B is the voucher list for December 5th, 2022, $2,986,416. Item 3C is for the week of December 12th, 2022, and the amount is for $2,523,331.78. And item 3D is for the week of December 19, 2022, with a combined amount of $3,309,455.54.
Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, what's the total amount that we're going this time around on those items that you just went through?
Total amount of,
Yeah, I mean, we got some, 12 million or 13, 14 million?
yeah, and it's because we didn't have meetings in December. And for instance, we didn't have meetings while you had the public hearings. Then we had a meeting in December 13th, that was your last meeting. We didn't have any other meetings after that, so this is the first opportunity to catch up with all.
I guess just for consistency.
Yeah.
I would just like, well, the public obviously knows that I voted against, the move down here from our prior location. And I say prior location because now we are here. And the democratic process took place, I got outvoted. And, until we got here, I continued to vote against expenditures for this move, thinking possibly maybe I would prevail on my objection, but I did not. And I will probably vote against this as kind of a one last stand because it is a continuation of last year's activities. But I fully intend, once we've now occupied the building, we're here. Whether I agree or not, we're here. And so I do not want to hold up government by continuing an objection that seems to have no avail. So from this point on, I will no longer be bringing this up. But this is from last year, so that's my concern here. So however we want to go about that, that'll be the end of the saga as far as I know, and an example of what a great country we live in, and you don't always get your way. I wish Congress would listen to this. So I'm gonna just let it go at that.
So it sounds like we want to remove these
Yeah,
four.
we'll move this to department
Department
items.
items.
And that will
Okay.
make a formal presentation on Tuesday, and at that point you will
Thank you.
exercise your individual votes as you deem appropriate.
Thank you, but that's kind of my position that's been ongoing, and you've heard me say before that I tried to be consistent in my endeavors, whatever they were, so. Thank you for indulging, my resistance, if you will, but we've finally come to where we are today, and I just don't want to hold up government, and the process.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. So
Thank
you
you.
will see those items on the department, for next week's agenda. Thank you.
Okay, then let's look at 3E. We'll have one consent item.
Yeah.
probably, which will become 3A, and it's a clerk item regarding reclassifying a position.
Thank you, Commissioners. For your, every time that we have a vacant position, I think there is an opportunity for every office and department to look at the business needs. And in this case, the clerk's office has gone through this process. And they have assessed the vacant position of the clerk judicial proceeding specialist is no longer meeting their needs. And that goes along with recruitment and retention, as all of you are aware. So this particular request is for you to consider reclassifying this clerk judicial proceeding specialist to a clerk's legal records coordinator. This is have a budget impact that goes from $5,333 to $6,482, just about $1,149 and maybe 21.5% increase. This is fully funded by the general fund, and I believe the clerk's office is intended to cover the additional expenses on the current budget allocation. But as Commissioner Edwards has been very clear in the past, this will have consequences on the future general fund allocations, which becomes part of the baseline budget. So, and Tawny Sharp is here to answer any questions if you have any.
Can you repeat what was the percentage increase?
Is at 21.5% or $1,149 a month. And again, what I'm just giving you is the high end. A particular individual who may be coming into this position may not be placed on the top range of the scale. But I'm just giving you the overall top range of the impact.
Okay, Tanya, why don't you give us your perspective on the change, what the two, is it something like, sometimes we make these changes to kind of meet the actual needs of what the employee is doing. Sometimes you decided you don't need that position, you need a completely different type of functionality. What's the idea here?
Yeah, so the cases evolve. It used to be that we really only got exhibits in mainly our criminal case types, once in a while in a civil. But as times have changed, we now are getting exhibits in all of our case types, and we're getting a lot of exhibits. And we currently have 2 records coordinators, which are not able to keep up with properly managing those with the current workload. And if we are not managing the exhibits properly, it's a huge liability to our office and the county. And so Linda and I have been watching this and reviewing it, and as we had a vacant position, we made the decision that it better fit to reclassify one of our proceeding specialists, which is a lower classification than this records coordinator, that would allow us to have more hands-on processing our exhibits, returning them, and also processing our appellate work, which is also increased. And we would still, if needed for coverage, for court coverage, be able to rely on these individuals to cover court should we be short-staffed due to illness. So it just better equips us to be able to manage the office.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think I'll take that as the gospel that we're doing the right thing. I don't want to micromanage over there, and I hope it works out. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sure.
So, is the clerk's office planning to absorb this cost in the coming year?
Yes, we have sufficient budget for 2022 to absorb this cost.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Because maybe a follow-up with our chair's question. Could you explain again that this might not be at the top range?
Yeah, because what I give you is the top range of the 2 classifications that you're considering, and that is the 21.5%. But an individual who comes into this position may not be placed on the top range, so that impact may not materialize fully. And it will take probably, depending on the experience and education this particular individual may be placed, it will take probably maybe 2, 3, 4 years until they can reach the top scale.
Okay, I got it. Thank you, Connie.
Yes, of course.
Let's move on then to department items. Item 4A, several under the Commissioners heading. 4A is election of offices for Board of County Commissioners for 2023.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is for you to formalize the appointment of Commissioner Mejia as the chair and Commissioner Mesa as the vice chair for the 2023 Board of County Commissioners.
Any questions on this one?
No, sir.
Okay, me neither. Let's just move along to B, Commissioners' representation and assignments on boards and commissions.
Thank you. This is also for you to formally confirm the 2023 Board of County Commissioners representation and assignments to boards and commissions. And I believe you went through in
Commissioners
great
went all
detail.
through that on
Yeah,
Tuesday, so we should be
made
good there.
Some adjustments to that. I revised that because we did find a couple of misspelling errors, and so we got it covered.
And you'll just have a list that will,
Is attached to the agenda, it's a list, yeah. I will not be going through each one of them, that will take me the whole hour.
4C is update parking resolution.
Yes, so you may recall, we had a parking resolution that we identifies all the different parking facilities that we have here and as part of the overall business of the county. And this particular resolution, what it does, it adds the parking lots that we have here at the atrium. So you may recall, we have parking facilities here, we have a satellite facility in the back of, across the street, and also we have another parking facility here across the street at the corner where we park county vehicles. So we just need to bring those amenities into the overall resolution. And what is not here yet, but you will see down the road, is we're gonna go through another parking assignments at the courthouse campus. Since most of us move out of the courthouse campus, the parking assignments there needs to be reassessed. So, but that is not part of this. This is just adding the new amenities related to the parking. That makes sense.
No, it doesn't,
Okay.
it doesn't truly make sense to me. Is this a necessary function that we have to get so official on parking that we end up creating a separate resolution to cover discretionary issues?
So
I just
this
don't
is-
understand exactly where we're going and
So let me
even
give you,
why we've been
let me
there.
give you a little bit of history on parking. Parking always seems to be an interesting process that we go through. When we allocate parking assignments to individual offices and departments, and what we consider to be to the general public as well as for county employees. Back in, I believe in 2017, 18, the board passed a resolution identifying all the parking facilities at the courthouse and other facilities, where it specifically determines who will have parking assignments and how many. And as a result of that, we issue those permits. So that's how, and that is an interesting process that we go through because parking assignments seems to be near and dear to some offices and departments, just to leave it like that. So that resolution was put in place. This amendment to that resolution is to add the parking here at the atrium. That's the only action the board requesting. It's just to consolidate all the parking facilities that
Can
we
we
have.
pass
that
a
we manage.
resolution that says we delegate to the county manager full plenary authority
can-
to
What I-
address parking concerns at county
I'd
facilities?
recommend, and maybe if you can consider amending this resolution, is when we come back with the next parking assignments at the courthouse, then I will introduce a new resolution for you to delegate that authority to the county manager. And I absolutely agree with that.
Okay, I guess, but for now, we're kind of being asked to put our stamp on something that I don't totally have a good understanding of. We're gonna ask employees to walk across the street and go over behind the realty office, I guess, because that's a separate area.
Satellite.
And for the safety of the employees, we have evening meetings, we have evening activities here. That's one of the reasons that I wasn't too thrilled about this location, because inadequate parking. But I'm not quite ready. I would like to at least review this and spend, so I'm asking, what is the time element that seems to be so important that we can't
There
delay
is
this?
none. What I can probably do is bring you a copy of the resolution, the current resolution for you to, get familiar with. But related to the parking, the satellite parking that we have behind, across the street, actually it's a shorter distance from the employee parking that we have
No.
at the courthouse campus right now.
It's just that we weren't by the jungle, now we're by the jungle. That's all. I won't get into any other of my particular concerns, but I would like to not take an action on this today until we have time to review this.
I'm not asking to do that
And
today.
take a look. Is
It's
that
next
okay?
Tuesday. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how my
So,
CPAs feel.
yeah, I mean, I kind of had the same questions as Commissioner Edwards, and I'm wondering, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm wondering, what is it that this resolution does? Is it, it says here on the agenda, adding parking lots, so like,
It is, three locations. The parking lot here at the atrium, the parking lot at the satellite across the street, and the parking lot across the street at the corner.
are we
It's just
leasing
add
those?
the look- We're leasing those facilities.
But it wasn't, is that separate from the lease of this building?
Yes.
So is this
because-
like approving a lease for
No.
those three
No,
new
no, no.
parking lots?
This is later on. No.
So that's what I'm asking, what is this, when we pass this
Just-
resolution, what have we done exactly?
Adding, just listing those parking lots. That's all you do, is just listing the parking lots.
Wow, that just seems an odd thing for the Board of County Commissioners to do. I mean, do I have to list that the auditor's office is on the west side of the 3000 Pacific? Do I have to, why am I listing parking lots? Why is that
No,
a
it's-
legislative
think
act?
think in terms of the parking lot itself. I'm not, at this action, you're not gonna be listing every single assignment within the parking lot, no. It's just, it will be parking lot of the atrium, parking lot across the street, and parking lot at the corner. I mean, more.
It seems like an extremely odd legislative act of the Board of County Commissioners.
And this, because the board at that time took an action in identifying the parking and how the parking assignments will be, so there's a resolution.
So it's a historical.
So, but certainly, I mean, you bring in a good point, if the board doesn't want to go through this process, which I sense that is the case, maybe an opportunity to rescind that resolution and delegate that authority to
That's where I'm thinking
administration.
of, it makes sense to me.
Well, I don't know as I'm prepared to make the decision one way or the other right now
Sure.
until we get to the bottom of this. I'm kind of curious, if we're leasing property, who's leasing the property? I haven't seen a lease come through that, that we're doing. Is this, and you're saying it's not part of the atrium project, so how does all that fit? And what's the dollar amount that we're talking about? And are we talking about long-term leases, an annual lease with extensions, something that coincides with what we're doing here at this facility? I know we're asking a lot of questions, putting you on the spot. I don't necessarily need answers immediately, but I do need answers about what all of this entails until we do something with it, whether that's turn the authority over to the county manager to do something, or if we carry through on the leases. And I'm gonna tie that in with this citizen request that came in this morning for information that we're doing something different. I don't know that we're doing what we're doing at this point, because these questions haven't been answered, but it kind of ties right in with, is this the second lease we're talking about that a citizen is bringing forward? And I don't remember a first lease adjustment, but maybe that was parking. I don't know. There's too many questions, so I'll bring this up at a later point, when we get to 4A or E or whatever it is. But no, I would be satisfied if we just hold off until we can get a little more understanding of what's going on. If that's.
No problem for me on that one.
Okay.
So I will, what I will do is I distribute the existing resolution related to parking, the board approved. That gives you a little more background, just related to the parking. This action does not include anything related to leases or anything.
All right, so we're gonna we have agreement to remove this item and more to come on that.
Sounds like it. Yes, sir.
Okay, so then item 4D is TC Media contract extension.
So, in this particular item, the board has been tracking on related to the contract that we have with DC Media. Some of the directions the board provided last year in 2022 in coordination with the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. We went through a request for proposals to secure the services for what we call is the government news media. So that took us a little longer than we expected going through the request for proposals, and we only received one proposal, which was from TC Media. And when we talk about in terms of the timing, the contract with TC Media lapsed last December 31st, 2022. So this particular item, we request for you to extend the existing contract with TC Media for another 6 months. The other jurisdictions are doing exactly the same thing. And that will allow us time to reformat the contract a little more in the longer term with TC Media. That's really what it is. It's just extending the same terms and conditions of the contract for another 6 months. And then it will give the county and the other jurisdictions to work on a more comprehensive contract with TC Media as we move forward.
Commissioner Edwards?
Just for clarification, this is where we get personnel from them to come oversee some of the activity going.
You saw Martha, I was here.
Yeah, yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, I just
through
wanna
the
make
live
sure what we're
stream.
covering, and,
And also the services, when the commissioners have coffee with our commissioners, a little production
Right.
things they do also.
every once in a while, we try to inform the public of what's going on. Could you include that this is a 6-month extension in
Oh,
your
yeah.
description?
Thank you.
You've got the dollar amount, but just for clarification, and I think I'm okay on this, sir.
Okay. Can you remind me, Romero, or update the board on back, I don't know, lose track of time, but there was the issue that TC Media was gonna be displaced from the Comcast building, and that was causing consternation because how would they be able to afford, and how would that affect our contract? Did that get resolved? Cause last time, the candidate debate still happened at Comcast building. Last time I was there, like a couple of months ago, they were still in the same spot.
Maybe I can take you back a little bit longer than that. Before we negotiated the franchise agreement with AT&T, I mean with Comcast. Under the previous franchise agreement with Comcast, there was a provision that TC Media can utilize their adjacent space on the west side of, by the West Side Hospital, the Capital Medical Center, with $1 lease a year. So while we were negotiating the contract with the new franchise agreement with Comcast, they decided no longer to honor that. So that created an issue as to where TC Media needed to find a new space, number one, or just pay an actual lease to Comcast of that building. I believe that TC Media has already signed a lease of that particular building for how long? Do you know? Yep. So they have already signed a lease, which that creates an additional dollar amount they need to be able to cover. So within the whole process, when we were looking as to how the local jurisdictions could probably see the services that TC Media provided, when we saw that perhaps the increase on the lease, the conversation evolved as to we need to find out if there's any other outfit out there. And I believe the conversation was TVW. They can provide services. And that's a result of the request for proposals. We only received one. Here we are. We just extended the existing contract. No additional increases on the lease. Everything is the way we have it. And that will give us time again to negotiate a new contract with TC Media as we move forward. Did I answer your question?
So the answer is, they're there, but they're paying more.
Right.
And that's gonna end up probably costing us more when we work on this new contract.
And that's part of the negotiations that we need to go through in the next 6 months. I'm not gonna be stating the fact it's gonna cost us more because we need to negotiate.
The RFP that we sent out, did it set like, I don't know how those are structured exactly, do they set like, is it just like, give us your best price, or do we set like expectation or ceilings of what we can pay, and then they try to say what they could, here's what we could do for that price, like how is it?
I don't believe the request for proposals had a a financial component, it was more about services. And then the consultant, whomever provide,
So that's still
they're
the
gonna be meeting those services by this cost.
Commissioner Edwards, you had your hand.
What's the fund that this dollar amount is coming out of?
It's PEG money.
Okay, that's,
And also.
I just
for
wanna
a
clarify that for the
A portion
public.
of that, and also a portion also comes with the Comcast franchise agreement that we receive revenue from.
and that's the PEG money, right?
Yeah.
PEG, that's what it's called. I don't know how you keep track of all this stuff, but okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
You have good memory, so.
And since we're on that topic, and you mentioned,
And Megan can add anything if you'd like to add on this.
do we cover all the bases, Megan, or was there something that you know that's, yeah, come on up. Cause I got another question for you. Sorry.
So what we requested in the RFP is basically a menu of services. Like if we selected this many hours, this is how much it would cost.
Okay.
And so it's definitely different than what we currently have in our contract. And so they listed out the different services, and so we need to go through and see what services we actually want to use.
And at a super high level, did you look at that and go, oh my gosh, they're tripling the cost for this or that? I mean, is it gonna be within the ballpark of?
It is definitely more, but I think that's the cost of doing business. But it depends on what we choose. So, I mean, it really depends on what we choose.
You think we have some flexibility with that?
I absolutely think so.
And there's some things that we need them to do.
And there's some things we don't need them to do any longer.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there's definitely.
Okay, so we have flexibility to manage the cost. And on that topic, since we lost Brian, I mean, are we looking for someone to replace him and
Yeah,
how's that go?
we have received, what, 10 applications?
I received 9 applications. I'm gonna
applications.
be reviewing those this week and setting up interviews as soon as I possibly can.
Very good.
Working on that.
Great, thank you. Anything else, Commissioner?
No, I think you've covered it, sir.
But related to that item, you will see in your upcoming biennial budget that we need to address the overall public information officer for the Board of County Commissioners, especially coming to 2 additional commissioners. The increased workload is gonna be there, and we need to respond with additional resources. So nothing for you to decide today, nothing for you to react to that. That will be coming part of your conversation in the fall of this year. And I will take you back at that time to this conversation.
All right,
Food for thought, commissioners.
let's go to item 4E, contract amendment with DM Ventures Pacific LLC.
Yeah, thank you. This is an item that just came yesterday, I believe. And it is related to the atrium. And as you know, we have a lease, and I believe on October 26th, an amendment number 1 was approved. Is that correct? Yeah, and that's what answered one of your questions that you have, Commissioner Edwards. So this is an amendment number 2 that increases the tenant improvements that we have here at the atrium. The tenant improvements that we had, obviously we have a dollar amount, and as we move along, design changes, additional infrastructure needs were put in place. And the approval process went through in order to meet the intended deadline as to where we need to be. So here we are, we asked the board to consider amendment number 2 to actually tenant improvements to increase that by $1,548,587.98. The term of the lease of this particular document does not change. It's for 7-year lease, 3 years extension, and the cost of the lease no longer doesn't change either. It's only changing the tenant improvements that we have listed on the current lease. So there's a lot of elements that have gone through a very complex project to implement. There's always a hindsight, there's always 2020. There's always opportunities we could have done a little bit better job, yes. But also we needed to manage a lot of expectations from the stakeholders that we just moved in. And sometimes the urgency to meet those expectations put us in the position to have a cost increases. So I'm just gonna leave it there for now, but certainly you have questions, I'll be more than happy. If I don't have the answer to those questions, we'll wait for Robin, Tom, and Tony are here to answer any particular technical questions related to this proposal. So you guys wanna come to the front, that would be great. But really, this is a result of delivering this very complex project. We have seen and experienced cost increases. There is no other explanation than that.
Just to clarify, so I understand this item, it says for a total value of 7.6 million. So you're saying we were at 6.1
Yeah,
and now we're
that's
at
what initially,
7.6?
the initial lease that you approved had a component of tenant improvements. That the tenant improvements, it was, yeah, you are correct, it's about 6.1. And that was part of the initial lease, and we had an estimate the tenant improvements will cost that much. And as you may recall, the board authorized, the majority of the board, a ceiling of $10 million on the overall cost for this project. And that included the tenant improvements and the furniture and all the amenities associated with it, the 10 million. This is just amending the current lease that we have because the cost increases on the tenant improvements has gone up by that much. That makes sense.
So on top, so if we were talking about total cost, it would be this amount plus, you said furniture and.
Yeah, and that is, and again, as you may recall, you set aside
But
and you
we're within the
approved
$10 million we started.
And I think we still within the $10 million. And we have been managing all this move, including furniture, cabling, IT, and everything else within that $10 million ceiling. And we are still under that budget authority. So we're not asking for additional budget authority.
We just have to amend the lease.
We just need to amend the lease in order for us to pay properly.
Commissioner Evans?
I don't have, an exact amount, but I'm looking at this total project at about $22 million total. Why is that? I mean, I'm adding up these, 4 earlier items that we talked about.
I'm sorry, no.
That's not,
The voucher list?
yeah, I mean, I get it. That's not the total,
No,
that's
no.
the total voucher list for the month, not the atrium.
For the
Okay,
month.
So where are you
Each of
thinking?
the voucher list items have elements.
In it. I get that, that takes care of that. So we're still under the 10 million though? I mean,
And we have the project managers here.
We are.
do you know about where we're at?
About 6,500 under the 10 million.
Oh, yeah, that's cutting her close, huh?
Yeah.
So, this particular 1.5, I guess, puts us to that amount.
Yes, yes,
So that's included in.
yes.
But if something like this comes up again, we don't have it.
Hopefully that's it
Correct.
coming because we're
Right.
pretty much
No, I was in a
done.
conversation with the inventors yesterday, going through this, to make sure there were no more costs coming. The only cost we have added here is the 76,000 for a parking lot enclosure and gate. That's why I've included that. We went over it a couple times and they assured me there was no more. But I did put a $50,000 contingency in there, so when they do come up and said, oh, we forgot to bill you for this, we have it covered. And that 50 also keeps us within under the 10 million.
What about the new leasing agreements we're talking about with parking and for what period of time and all that? I mean, where does that fit in here? We haven't reached the agreements apparently yet.
I can't address the parking because I don't have that off the top of my head, but the amendment 2 adjusted the leasing to start November 1st, and those set rates are in the lease agreement already. And they're,
That's for this facility,
yeah, the yearly lease.
but not the parking.
I can't address that because I don't have that information. I wasn't prepared for that.
My understanding, sir, is the parking is actually included in the lease. So when the DM Ventures purchased the building. Along with that purchase came the parking lot that we're calling the annex behind the real estate office. That was part of their initial purchase. And then they went out and purchased the Pattison lot across the street where our government vehicles are. And they are including that as part of the initial lease of the facility as a whole. That's my understanding.
Because they were committed on a certain number of parking stalls.
Okay, so, the owner of this building, we're doing some kind of, I don't know, sublease or some other lease about parking, is that?
No,
No,
sir,
No.
no.
Uh,
They own those facilities.
but they own the two parking lots?
Correct.
well, I think they don't own the parking lot across, do they?
My understanding
They
is
do?
they do.
Okay.
That was part of the
They
purchase of
probably
this
purchased that,
building.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I knew that the lot at the corner, Patterson, that came in between, construction, that comes available to the owner, so he purchased that lot as well.
Yes.
And included as part of the overall lease to provide the number of spaces that we need. And so far, we have fully operated here at the atrium, and I have not seen full the parking lot across the street. Seems to be during the day enough capacity.
I'm trying to make this simple for staff. Any reason you couldn't, I don't know if you can leave it on the consent item, just leave everything alone, I guess, cause I'm probably gonna be a no vote on this because it's part of this whole process
And
that we've been going through.
that is part of, is that department item?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to make it easy on staff. I'd like to get over this hump at some point. Okay. I have to say, I do think this new communication we've got from a citizen does raise questions. I'd like to see if they could be addressed, but I don't know where that fits. You have addressed the one thing was on the October 26th, 2022, we did an extension, and I probably don't recall it, because I'm sure I probably voted against it, I don't know that, but,
That was an extension, it just moved the move-in date from February to November first is our first month that we paid lease.
Because it was a delay on when we were planning to move.
and so that was an amendment to the lease agreement, is that that was the first amendment to the lease agreement?
Correct,
And then this action is the second amendment
correct.
to the lease agreement. Okay, I'm okay for now, sir. More discussion, I guess, to come.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we were pretty sure what their tenant I never remembered the tenant improvements being estimated at less than 7 million, so the fact that we're going from 6.1 to 7.6, that's within the normal 10%. In the midst of an inflation, high fuel price, escalating cost for everything, I'm frankly a little bit relieved that that's where we landed. I mean, cause a lot of other projects, capital projects that I'm dealing with lot and with other committees that I'm on are going up 20%, they're going up, 30%. Salmon recovery projects are going, we're having to allocate emergency money and pulling money from all over the place to keep projects moving.
Then you have taken an action in other projects related to
Right,
the
with Public
cost.
Works, we had to,
Even reduce the number of miles they were doing in terms of the chip sealing. So because if you see the tenant improvements, we haven't gone above and beyond what we already agreed with the offices and departments. And in a way, is the cost of implementing the plan based on the conditions of the market. And at some point, we wanted to move right away. There was a huge delay in the furniture. And when I talked to the owner, I asked him to, I didn't want to continue to start paying the lease if we don't have occupants in the building. He understood, and we
So that First Amendment saved us money because it delayed
delayed
our
that, because,
obligation
you
to
know,
make
we,
these payments when we're not
obviously,
using
we
it.
wasn't going to pay a lease on a unoccupied building, which I believe that is a good partnership with the owner as we move along.
Okay.
So, it really is, and again, there's always a hindsight, always an opportunity to do better. And as we move along, I don't think we're gonna be seeing a project this magnitude coming up soon, maybe at the courthouse campus, but it's a different project delivery method that we're contemplating to do. In that case, it's not a lease, it's we own the facility, which brings another set of opportunities and issues with the courthouse remodel. But here we are on this one, and I believe that when the board approved $10 million, that was probably a good estimate that they will be going through in terms of tenant improvements and furniture. And as you heard from the project managers, we're still under that threshold.
Commissioner Edwards.
Is the total, I guess, package, so the original lease agreement here, that's gonna run about $7 million or something over the next, what is it, 5 years or 7 years?
7 years.
7 years, and then, so then another 10, which we seem to be under that threshold. So we're gonna be around 18 million total on this particular, leasing this
Yeah,
building,
so
moving down here.
So the
Everything.
lease payments, the lease itself is not included as part of the 10 million.
Yes, I realize that, that's why I'm
Replacing
saying,
18.
that's kinda where we're, so
Yeah,
we're
and
about
the-
18.
In the long term, obviously, I think in an escalated process that we pay a year. I think in the next years, remind me how the escalated process, if you have any.
I'm just going from memory, it starts off like at 1.1 or 1.2 and escalates up to like 1.8 in the 7th year.
And then this is kind of the other expenditures to make everything fit. So let's just say $18 million. And the reason I wanna clarify that, I hate it when I get asked by a constituent at a Rotary meeting or whatever it is, well, what did that cost us finally? Well, I don't wanna say I don't know, cause then I gotta come back and bug folks, but if I can be able to say, well, it was about $18 million. And then I'm not off the hook, I'm just saying I've got an answer.
Instead of building a $300 million courthouse, which
There you
probably
go.
would have been
There-
400
there you
million
go.
by the time we got done. That's, I mean, I think you're about right, and that's kind of the number that I've been using
Okay, good.
when I'm asked that question.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, we move over 300 employees.
No small undertaking.
Over 300 employees to this new facility. And you look from that level of investment in the facility we have been able to create to benefit the public.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, sounds like today's gonna put that to rest. It's gonna be a done deal and we're gonna move on and I'm gonna cry and that's the way life is. Okay.
So that's the item that, so you will be able to exercise your individual votes on
Yes,
this
sir.
item on next Tuesday.
All right, let's go to
Thank you.
item
Thank
5.
you, gentlemen.
Community Planning and Economic Development, set a public hearing for Development Code Docket Item A19, Wireless Code Update.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is an item that the board has discussed in a couple of occasions. And a little bit of a historical perspective, the Planning Commission reviewed this item on several work sessions back in 2021 and 22. And also they went ahead and had a initial public hearing back in June 2nd, 2022. Following the public hearing, there was a request to form a stakeholder committee of citizens. And the board approved that, and the stakeholder committee went through the process and worked with the planning commission and staff. The stakeholder committee met 3 times and provided feedback to the planning commission. The planning commission ended up having an additional 9 work sessions, included after the public hearing that resulted in providing a recommendation for the board on a 5-3-1. That will be 5 in favor, 3 in opposition, and 1 was absent. And staff also provided to the board the majority and minority report, and you went through with a great deal of analysis on those on the October 12th, as well as on the follow-up briefing on November 9, 2022. The results of the conversation that you had with the staff, and as a result of the planning commission recommendations, and I believe the chair of the planning commission was present in a couple of those briefings with the board. And you requested to stop to bring an AIS for you to set the public hearing, where you will be receiving public testimony before you consider taking an action. That's the gist of this item. At this point, we requesting the board to set the public hearing for February 7, 2023. We'll make sure on the recommended action we listed the new location, which is room 110 of the atrium 3000 Pacific. So we'll add that description before you consider taking an action on Tuesday. Any questions?
So I have correspondence from members of the citizen committee that asked if this could be an evening public hearing, so they feel a lot more people will be able to attend. So in terms of managing that request, I'm wondering, how many days notice do we need to set it? Because I was thinking it would make, rather than having this standalone evening public hearing, if we could combine it with our January 24th, when we're already going to be doing county commissioner meeting in the evening, it might make it more efficient.
January 24th.
Is that not enough time?
How about February 28th then? Is
Or
that-
we may or may not have.
You may or may not have that.
Based on our conversation.
But if we're gonna be having an evening public hearing, then might as well.
I don't know, if my seatmates are willing, I'm willing to do that because that was the whole point, was getting more public input and.
You can set the February 7, 2023 public hearing at 5:30.
So let's, I don't know, I guess that would be my proposal, instead of doing it in January. That way people have the time to be notified and, so I would suggest
So go ahead and commit to another February.
Yeah, go ahead and commit to the February, and then after that, we can reassess for the March meeting and set it at 5:30. I would actually suggest 5
o'clock, maybe.
5 o'clock or 5:15, because if we're gonna have a BoCC meeting starting at 6 PM, then
I get to say give people an hour. If we're gonna do, so you're saying, I think what you're saying is February 28th, we'll have a 6 PM meeting and we'll have and then have 5 PM public hearing for this wireless.
Does 5 PM meet the concern that these citizens have?
They were thinking 6, I think.
but if we do 6, then we're,
We're gonna have a late meeting that day.
yeah.
I think any way you look at it. I do think there's a fair amount of concern by certain members of the public. And I do wanna try to give them the benefit of the doubt of being able to attend if they want. But by then, we're gonna have all the bugs worked out, and citizens will be able to check in through remote testimony or something?
Yeah, so we will have most of the bugs worked out, at least the
You don't wanna
bugs that we
say
know.
all, I'm sure.
But certainly, the Zoom will be up and running, and the public testimony will be as you have received public testimony via Zoom or in person. So at that time, we'll make sure that is the case.
I'm with the
I
chair.
have Maya and on the Zoom, and I don't know if Maya, if the February 24th, if I may, gives you enough time for notice.
Yeah, so the January 24th meeting would not meet our noticing requirements. We have to give it a minimum of 20 days. So,
Your sound is coming a little skipped, sorry,
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
a little bit better.
So we have a 20-day noticing requirement, and the 24th of January would not meet that. So we can either do a 5:30 on February 7th, or we can push it to the fourth Tuesday in February, the 28th, and just do a 5 or a 5:30 meeting on that date.
I'm not opposed to 5:30 on the 7th either. Just as a,
Compromise, so to speak.
get him until 5:30 and then we go home after it's over. I mean,
Okay.
it's another evening,
Yeah,
but
you
it's
can,
not,
you
it
can,
wouldn't
you
be
can
as late
have a
as
5:30 at public hearing. I mean, you don't need to attach it to.
yeah, it was just a thought I had. If we
That will give you the flexibility to determine the February, the 4th.
Right, when we would maybe not have to have that evening February meeting.
I'm willing to accommodate or go along on any of these proposals, actually. I mean, I'm,
February 7th at 5:30, will that be something commissioners will want?
I have to check my evening meetings for that day.
you know, I really think we should, I wish the schools would come watch these meetings. They should teach a civics class on the complexities of your government work for you.
That is such a true statement, the complexity of county government.
Apparently I'm going to Rochester High School to do just that at some point here and there.
Oh, that's cool.
One of the teachers.
Civics 101?
Oh, really?
Mhm.
We use this one as the example of.
We're hoping we can haul them in here, the students here, and then let like
Oh, yeah,
auditor, assessor, like have different
Oh,
officials.
kind of neat.
Great.
That'd be good for that day.
February 7th, 5:30?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go
Good
with
with that.
February 7th, 5:30, Maya. And we'll update the action to reflect that as well as adding the actual location on the action.
Great, thank you, commissioners.
Passing this chair and going back to you. We're at item 6.
So going on with Public Health and Social Services, item 6A, contract with Olympia Mutual Aid Partners for Safe Spaces pilot project.
Thank you, Commissioners. I think, I believe the board heard a little bit of this conversation in late last year. And this is related to the, let me get my paperwork. Yeah. Is Orca approached they had issues in enforcing on 2 locations, the burning, particularly in homeless camps. It has created a lot of, they use materials, they probably may not necessarily be good to burn and creates an air quality issue. So the Olympic Regional Cleaner Agency, ORCA, partnered with Olympia and Mutual Aid Partners to embark on a pilot program that will address 2 locations. One is here at the jungle, and the other one is on the Percival Creek and homeless camps. The intent of this particular pilot program is to increase outreach to address hazardous smoke and fire concerns, improve access to safer warming, cooking, lighting, and water purification sources and alternatives, improving access to garbage removal services and supply, improving access to education and communication about safer resources and alternatives. And it will be also give us the time to collect the data and see how that is implemented. This particular pilot project was presented to the Regional Housing Council on a couple of occasions. And the Regional Housing Council recommended approval by the Board of County Commissioners for $101,469. This money is coming from the set aside on the emergency funds, the RHC sets, and that is from the House Bill 2163, which is the document recording fees. So every year, the Regional Housing Council set aside $200,000 to respond to some of the emergencies. And this particular pilot project will come out of that funding. There is not any general fund associated with this particular item. And as you may recall, the document recording fees is a combination of funding from all the jurisdictions to put into the regional pool. Keely?
I think, good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I think that was a really good summary. I know that some of the other work that both Olympia Mutual Aid Partners and ORCA have done is met with fire chiefs, regional fire chiefs, to discuss this and received significant support from those entities, particularly Olympia's fire department, as they respond quite often to calls of burning in the encampments, and so are very eager to see, hopefully, some preventative work done through this pilot project to reduce the use of burning, especially of toxic materials to keep warm or to cook. And oftentimes it's also for how folks in encampments take care of their garbage, is by burning it. So this has been an ongoing issue. I remember in 2019 when I first began in this position, meeting with ORCA, Olympia Mutual Aid Partners, City of Olympia, to discuss burnings happening within the jungle. So we've come a long way to get to a point where ORCA is really excited to help participate, and in fact has offered to provide some funding for ongoing cleanups as they are needed in these two camps. So happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Oh, that's a good point. I forgot to mention the ORCA is also participating financially on this pilot program.
Yeah.
And I believe they're participating with about $7,000. Is that correct?
That's what I recall, between 6 and 7.
So thank you for the reminder.
So I serve on both the ORCA board and the Regional Housing Council. I was approached by Jeff Johnston early on in the process of this coordination, and seeing kind of what way we could get to kind of the point where we are now. The ORCA board was supportive of this project, and that's commissioners from several other counties, as well as all of the Tumwater representative, as well as Olympia and Lacey. And there was also support from the Regional Housing Council for this project. This is coming from the Emergency Services Fund, which is just a set aside we have in the Regional Housing Council for projects like this that come up. And so there was a lot of support from the Regional Housing Council for this project. There was a lot of support from the fire chiefs. And it is a pilot project, so we'll see kind of how it works out. And I know the fire chiefs are excited to see how it works out and how it affects them. So there was a lot of great conversations. I'm really happy we're to this point. And like Keely mentioned, it's since 2019. I know that there's been a lot of history and conversations happening to get to this point. So just kind of wanted to give the commissioners my perspective, since I do serve on both of those boards. And Commissioner Edwards.
A couple of issues. Okay, if this is a pilot program, should it say a pilot program? So there's no doubt about what it is. I mean, I'd say Safe Spaces Pilot Program is what you've got in there, with an end date, so that it's a specific amount of money committed to a specific activity. And then, do we have any specific criteria as to what we truly expect to be the outcome to be, to see if this is successful or not? So
That is a great question, and that was part of the conversations that we had at the Regional Housing Council, is how are we gonna be measuring success of this pilot project, right? And that's really is gonna be, included in this pilot project will be data collection, and really seeing if we see a benefit in reducing the cause, the problem. So it is part of this pilot project to make the determination whether it's successful or not, because that was absolutely one of the questions that we asked. In fact, I believe that was the question that I asked at the Regional Housing Council, the initial
we're on the same
presentation.
wavelength.
What? So it is part of the pilot project is the data collection and see and determine whether this has provided benefits to address the core issue the Orca had, so. Yeah,
So
but that's a good point.
Are we gonna have something in there, though, to make sure that all the above happens?
It's part of the specific contract, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll add, I think it's just for 2023, it doesn't go beyond 2023. So Keely, if we can add the year, good suggestion, Commissioner, thank you.
And at some point, we're gonna have a review.
Yeah.
At the completion of the contract. And what are we gonna review? What are we really gonna, I mean, I'd like to see something in there, like you say, the criteria involved or the measurements, the whatever.
Yeah.
Something to see if it's gonna be successful or not.
Totally on point.
Definitely those things can be put within the scope of work upon approval of passing this measure and funding this pilot program. So I don't think there's a problem with that at all.
Yeah, okay, I'm good with, the chair's on there, so I'm fine with it.
Keely, can you describe a little more about what the activity, like what's the strategy here? You mentioned cleanups, but I mean, what are we actually paying for? What's gonna happen to try to reduce all of that?
My understanding is that there'll be a significant increase in education and outreach, along with specific strategies to reduce the need for fires. So Ty Gundel, one of the directors of OLIMAP, in her presentation to the Regional Housing Council, was highlighting, bringing warmer clothes, coming up with strategies that don't require a heating element to keep people warm, and finding ways for individuals to cook that doesn't require a propane tank. So they're working side by side with the fire department to try to work on compromises to understand that people are going to need to cook if that's where they're living is in encampments. Then how can they do that as safely as possible? So they'll be increasing education, going out there with warm supplies, ways for people to keep warm, ready to eat meals. So just a mix up of education around fire safety and supplies in which to make that possible. And because part of the problem is they're burning their garbage, that's where the money comes in from Orca for those camp cleanups, so they don't need to burn their garbage.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Keely, for all of your work for this. I know when projects like this come along, it's hard to sometimes be able to find the funding for it, and you and Tom were very essential in that. Okay, with that, we'll move on to Public Works. Item 7A, set a public hearing to consider adoption of a compost procurement ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Washington State Legislature, in their session of 2022, has House Bill 1799, which is really related to organics management across the state and to the jurisdictions that were responsible to manage that. One of the key elements they're required by this new law and is to rescue 20% of the previously disposed edible foods for human consumption by 2025, divert 75% of the previously disposed organic materials from landfills by 2030. The board received a briefing on November 30, 2022, where staff walked through the specifics related to this particular ordinance to meet the requirements of the new law. This particular ordinance was reviewed by the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, SWAT Committee, and the SWAT Committee submitted a unanimous recommendation for the board to consider approval of this particular ordinance. So this item for your consideration is for you to set the public hearing for January 31st, 2023 at 3:30 in the afternoon in this location. That will be room 110 of the Atrium, 3000 Pacific, for you to receive public testimony before consider taking action on this particular legislation. And we have Dean Bonning online to, if you have any additional perspective or answer any questions the commissioners may have.
I'd be happy to answer any questions. Actually, the county manager summary was very sufficient.
Thank you. Questions?
Did the state have a template, to kind of follow when they did this legislation? Or is it up to everybody to figure it out?
I don't think the legislation included a template for an ordinance, if that is what you're asking.
Do we have any other examples that we might be able to refer to so we don't have to reinvent the wheel? Because we can't be that much different than Kitsap County.
Actually, the ordinance is pretty much done and ready for your approval.
Yeah, but I mean,
And maybe Dean can answer that question.
and then, okay, go ahead.
So there was a framework issued by the state of Washington for local jurisdictions to follow, and we did indeed follow that.
That's all I was wondering. Thank you. I do have one other thing. You made mention to the location, which is here at the atrium, that we're gonna have that hearing.
Yeah.
And you made mention to a room.
110.
Is that this room?
That's true.
Is there any way, when we make reference to upcoming events that citizens may or may not participate in, that it would simplify it? Even over at the courthouse, oftentimes, I'll get asked at the old building that we're no longer at, where's that room at? Would it be simpler, or are we afraid to say, we're gonna meet right here, room 111, and it simplifies it for those that don't know where the locations are. We'll be here in a month or whatever, we're gonna have a public hearing. In this room, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the room is. I mean, there could be other locations that we use. I just wonder if that wouldn't simplify to our citizenry when they come in.
I think we're going through a process of the new location until the public realizes where that is. And that's where we're listed in here, room 110, the atrium, 3000 Pacific Avenue,
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, even look at this complex,
And even, but what you're asking is, we're working on wayfinding to provide some signage.
Okay,
So,
Okay.
and in fact, we're gonna have labels on the rooms to clearly identify what room is. So it's part of the
okay.
overall.
It's part of the plan.
Part of the plan, yes.
Sounds good, thank you.
But it's something I'm happy to do, Chair. Usually I'm the one saying where a meeting's gonna be located, so I'm happy to be like, it's gonna be
Okay.
right here. Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you for that. Okay,
Starting point is some signage out front, so that they at least get to the right building. Once they get to the right building, I think they'll be able
We
to
are
find the
working
boardroom.
on that, on the sign in front of the building, the facility,
Yeah.
that is gonna be upgraded, it's gonna affect Thurston County, general
Yeah, 'cause we're
government,
pretty
3000
anonymous right
Pacific,
now.
so it's gonna be pretty evident. I don't know if you want to give us a status on that one. Okay, but we're working on that, sir.
okay, Commissioner Mensah, any questions?
No, I remember this, I've had 2 briefings on this, actually.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on to item 7B. Thank you, Dean. Project prospectus and local program state funding agreement for the Pleasant Lake Elementary Pedestrian Improvements Project, CP number 61523.
So, the Public Works Department, Salta County received $1,440,000 in federal funds. And this related to the Safe Routes to School program for the design and construction for improvements in the vicinity of the Pleasant Glade Elementary. And some of the improvements will include sidewalks, maybe some bike lanes and lighting crosswalks between 15th Avenue and Pleasant Glade Elementary. Some of the steps that we need to take is to sign what we call a local agency agreement. That's an agreement between the county and the state, in which we need to obligate the funds for us to begin the process of designing and eventually constructing these particular improvements. So this particular item for your consideration is to authorize the Public Works Director to go ahead and sign the local agency agreement as well as the project prospectus to secure the money and begin the process, and also authorize the Department of Public Works Director to sign any subsequent amendments and supplements related to this particular grant. So with that in mind, Brian, any additional information, perspective?
Free to answer any questions. County manager explained it very well.
Questions, Commissioner Avery?
Does this fall under safe routes or something to schools?
On
We
point
used,
is the Safe Routes to School program.
it's all part of that,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely, and that's exactly the name of the program in which the money is coming from.
I just didn't see that in there, but maybe I missed it. Is that in there?
No, it was part of my
Yeah,
2
okay.
cents worth explanation.
I just oftentimes think it's.
But if were you suggesting maybe
It's
adding?
pretty minor, but,
Adding on the description that's from the Safe
no,
Routes to School?
that's fine. I mean, don't worry about it. I just like the idea that the public knows we're trying to do our darndest to keep the kids safe, that's all.
We can certainly add
Okay.
somewhere in there, a Safe Routes to School. Will that work,
That's fine.
Brian? Add on the description, something
Okay.
related to the Safe Routes to School? Yeah, thank you.
Pleasant Glade is that, it's in county then, it's outside the city of Lacey.
Yeah, it's on Abernathy, outside city of Lacey. It's in the urban growth area though.
Okay.
Thank you. No questions for me. Okay, and then that will conclude our department items. After that, we will go through our standing items. We do have a public hearing at 3:30. And it is a public hearing to hear objections to the proposed roll of rates and charges for Patterson Lake Management District Number 23.
As you stated, Madam Chair, that's pretty straightforward what the public hearing is all about. And you will receive public testimony. And at this point, we will, if we don't have an action item for you to take on this, just to close the public hearing. And then depending on the public testimony, we'll have a follow-up briefing for you to weigh in what you receive in terms of public testimony. And at that point, you will make a determination to bring an item for you to take a final action to approve the rates and charges for Patterson Lake LMD.
Okay. Thank you. Tim, anything you'd like to add?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
How are you feeling, Tim?
I'm feeling great today. Thank you.
Okay, good.
No questions, thank you.
No questions for me. We do have a Board of Health meeting, and that's the next item on our agenda, is to review the Board of Health draft agenda. However, it's 10:22. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be.
And we do have an executive session for your consideration later on.
We have two.
Just one.
Just one? Which
Yeah,
one's that?
I reviewed the agenda.
This one's gone?
Yeah.
How long is the Supreme leave?
Probably 30 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break.
Yeah, that might be a good, yeah.
We are back from break. It is 10:40 and I'll pass it to the Board of Health Chair.
All right, we got an agenda for Tuesday's meeting on January 10th, which will begin at 4:30. Calling the meeting to order, approving agenda, no minutes, it doesn't look like we have to worry about. Opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. We only have one department item. Kurt said we're gonna add maybe an item to introduce our new director.
Yeah, I was gonna recommend that we have a department item introduce the new Public Health and Social Services Director. Because the majority of the board has not met him, and so I think that would be good. They've gotten notifications, but it would be good to.
Welcome, David. Thank you. I think it's great to see you.
Woohoo,
Really excited.
David. Woohoo.
Super excited to have you. So just for my seatmates' understanding, last Board of Health meeting, I had paired with Kurt three items, and then the agenda came out and there were like 6 items on it. It ballooned and it was too much, and there were reasons for that, so this time, I again helped develop three items, and now there's only one, and there's reasons for that as well. Apparently, a couple of the items we had planned to address weren't ready, when follow-up with staff, turned out they weren't quite ready.
Fentanyl being one of them?
No, one of them was the pop-up issue,
Food pop-up,
food pop-ups, and the other one was,
the noxious weed.
noxious weed thing. So those were going to be on here, and for whatever reason, they're not on here because of staff needing more time to address them. So that's why you're only seeing one thing.
Right, and we're looking at the fentanyl for February, because I know that that's a definite concern for you, Commissioner Edwards, so that's on the list, but we were looking at it for February.
I reached out to Patrick from Carbon Pop and got feedback from him on how this new pilot project has been going, and so he provided really good feedback that I'll share when that item is.
If I made positive feedback.
It was positive.
Oh,
feedback.
good. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it was.
County manager, okay, yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Maybe for your consideration, another item, as we went through with the Board of County Commissioners, all the different proclamations for the year. And some of the proclamations perhaps falls within the Board of Health. Maybe a good exercise for the Board of Health to go through that list and make a determination what proclamations the Board of Health may consider.
That's a really good idea. There was a bunch that we, as a Board of County Commissioners, rejected. It's kind of a harsh way to say, but we declined to include. But they may be something the Board of Health would like to include. And a couple of them, I think we did sort of say that's probably a good Board of Health, but it'd be nice to have them weigh in, full board weigh in.
In some of their proclamations, they move into the Board of County Commissioners will be listed when you go through on Tuesday.
Jamie can probably help prepare that proposed list. Okay, so we'll add then 2 items essentially. We'll talk to our new director. We'll go through those things. And then the one here that we've got that's gonna be very substantial is the foundational public health funding and budget. And this is a kind of a follow-up from the last meeting where there was a lot of questions, some confusion about numbers, and then just clarity needed as to kind of where the Board of Health needed to make decisions. So Kurt, why don't you walk us through that?
So staff has taken the presentation and the information and slimmed it down so that it's gonna be a very much of a, this is the proposal in this bucket for this amount of money. And the other piece of this is we're looking at also saying what the Board of County Commissioners has already funded with foundational public health in round 1 and round 2. So that way it's not in a vacuum here, but they can see what's already been funded just with foundational public health. Because I know there are questions such as behavioral health, how are we approaching and funding behavioral health resources? Part of the challenge is also gonna be there was as you know, the Board of Health, public health budget is fairly large and complex, and there's a lot of resources that goes to various parts of the community, and it's gonna be very challenging if the new Board of Health members are going to want to talk about that on Tuesday, because it'll be more than just, the hour and a half to be able to describe all of the resources that the public health department provides within the community. So we're gonna try to stick to just foundational public health, what's already been funded through foundational public health, and what the recommendations here are. We're working hopefully with Robin Campbell today. I know she's on leave, but she reached out to us to say, hey, let's sit down if we can on Thursday she wants to help us with making sure to take a look at our presentation and make sure it makes sense and it comes across as making sense.
And then what are you gonna be asking the Board of Health to do?
To make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners on how the current budgeted items that are a placeholder should be appropriated, you know, and it's not appropriated, the appropriation's already taken place. It's how those items should be finalized by the Board of County Commissioners. In other words, it's already in the budget, it's a placeholder in the budget, and this would be the Board of County Commissioners approving or changing, but taking the recommendation and moving it forward.
Questions from board members? No?
I think
No, I think I'm good.
And we're going to make every attempt not to go down rabbit holes, because whenever you're talking about money and funding, we had this discussion yesterday, and it can get very confusing. It makes sense to us, but we are already tainted because we have been in the process for far too long. So we're gonna try to make sure we keep it at a 30,000 foot level and not try to get down into too far into the weeds.
Okay, hopefully that's good. And then, health officer report,
Right, and she's gonna include the infectious disease component of that, that's gonna be monthly now. And Dr. Abdelmalik will be providing that health officer report. The only concern I have is there's a public hearing prior to the Board of Health meeting, and so we will adjust, Dr. Abdelmalik will adjust her report as time permits. In other words, if we're running short of time because we started late, we will work towards that goal.
I mean, to me, we have flexibility. I think 90 minutes is kind of maybe what we shoot for, just roughly. But, you know, it's not the end of the world if we need to go an extra 15, 20, 30 minutes, you know. After 2 hours, I think it starts to become, I don't think we should be going much past that, just based on expectations, everybody's schedule. Again, if there's a real need, but just as a general matter. So I don't wanna cut Dr. Abdelmalik off, and again, we've got a full, hour for the Patterson Lake, which, you know, hopefully at this juncture, we won't need more than that, but we'll see. So I'm hopeful that we'll start on time.
Okay.
But you know, if we start at 4:45, you know, I think, it doesn't mean we have to cut our Board of Health meeting short, is what I'm trying to say.
And we'll work to make sure we don't go beyond, because I think last time we were pushed for time.
Yeah, and that wasn't anybody, that was just too much in the agenda.
Correct.
You know, if the Board of Health starts late, we need to cover we need to take our 90 minutes, let's say, and do our business. But last month's agenda was really like a 3-hour agenda. Then I could not, for the life of me, get staff and presenters to speed up and manage time, so.
And we're working on that process to make sure we have a good, concise presentation going forward. You know, in other words, for all topics, not just for this month's, but also we've implemented a rehearsal process for staff to go through a rehearsal.
Yeah, and if they really wanna know, they can ask me, how much time do I have, Commissioner? How about 10 minutes or 15 minutes? And then they can manage that. I expect them to do that.
Okay.
Because that wasn't happening at the last meeting.
And we've taken steps to implement some controls.
Commissioner Edwards.
I guess, is there any way that you could pass on to our new director the conversation that we, as the Board of County Commissioners, had over pop-ups and what brought that to a head? Because I just, you know, just mentioning pop-ups and okay, it's just another topic. I think it was more than that. When we had the discussion about our concern working with pop-up folks, and I just think there's more to it than it's just a pop-up issue. We were pretty, I just, the flavor might not be there if you see it on just a pop-up as an item. That's all.
We'll make sure he has that in background. We've been giving him the background on everything as we go forward. So far, for next week, it's been foundational public health.
Yeah.
But no, he'll definitely get that. And staff has been doing a good job of bringing him up to speed on the various issues. We're trying not to push the fire hose too high, you know, drinking from the hose, you know.
Maybe staff might not have looked at it quite as, you know. with the same eye that we look at.
So, so what we've been doing is some of the situations, we've been recommending that you go back and look at the recordings.
Maybe
Because
that's-
that gives you the full, and there's some good discussion in the recordings.
Yeah, okay.
So just to kind of clarify before we wrap this up, the Board of Health has an administrator, is that correct?
Mhm.
Which had been our previous health director.
Right.
You've been serving as interim.
Right.
David will then take over, and does he have, I remember us having to pass a resolution or something to formally
Yes.
appoint?
Yes, Commissioner, and my recommendation at this point to maybe idle at this point because we're gonna have a conversation whether the assignments to be the administrator goes to the director. It's overwhelming. We have 8 members, potentially 12. I think it will require special attention for considering hiring a new Board of Health administrator. It serves that purpose. And I think fundamentally, we may need to look differently because in order to make this Board of Health more effective, the administrator needs to have regular meetings with each of the board members, not just waiting once a month to have those conversations on an agenda setting. I think start managing the Board of Health a little bit different is what I think, and I need to have a conversation with David as to what the role of the administrator will be. And with that concept, you know, obviously David will be way too much in his plate to do that. So, and we sort of touch base on that particular position during the budget process. And the board said, okay, let's wait until the new director comes. Let's have a little more conversation about how this could probably be. So it's in the process of being discussed, but you're right. There is a formal action the Board of Health needs to take eventually as to what will be the public health administrator.
And we're also gonna have an assistant director
Right.
position.
Yeah.
Which might fit, depending on what that person.
Yeah,
works
so
on.
all that I think is I think it give us a little time now that we have a director to work on the logistics and provide bring some proposals
Okay,
to
as
the
long
board.
as it's people, as long as it's not, you know, lost in the shuffle.
It is, and at least from my
By the
point.
time, you know, between changing health directors twice essentially and expanding Board of Health, there's like on two different parameters, it's like, well, wait a minute, how is this all working now?
That's a good point, because also the Board of Health now has a lot more in-depth and complex topics in front of them and subjects, whereas it was, if you're, previously with 3 members on the Board of Health, the Board of County Commissioners got a lot of this information as the county commissioners, and so it made it easier when we got to the Board of Health meetings.
Right, you didn't have to go into maybe as
Right.
much depth because the commissioners had already heard it in some other context. Okay, very good. Then I'm gonna pass it back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so that, thank you. It is 10:53. We'll go ahead and head into executive session. We will be heading into executive session per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency's supreme living. This session will take approximately 30 minutes, and commissioners' action may follow.
Travis, can you hear us?
I sure can.
Yeah, our video is not working, but if you can turn your camera, the commissioners can see you.
Yeah, here we
So
go.
I will, let me go out and announce the executive session and put some notices, so give us a second.
Okay, we are back from executive session. It is 11:30 a.m. We were in executive session per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in official capacity is or is likely to become a party. When public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency, Supreme Living. No commissioner's action follows this executive session. Thank you to staff. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.